And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Make sure everyone can hear me, see me. Everything's good. I know that YouTube's always a little bit of a lag. But let's see here. Looks like we're good to go. So, we have a lot to talk about tonight. Make sure that I am on here correctly. So do the regular video first. Then we'll go back and check out all the screens and stuff. So I just want to touch on a couple of things, as you know. First of all, about the successful growth of the Discord chat. I want to share with you guys, especially premium members, where we're going with this. Again, as we discussed last week, I created the Discord as a way to buffer against all this insanity going on with social media and how it could impact what we do and what our community. And I am happy to report that the Discord growth has been very impressive. I think it's over like 160 people in there right now and growing, which is very surprising from my point of view. I think it's great. So where are we going with this? So the idea is that it's an area where you could talk about the weather at basically a chat room. You could talk about the weather. You can even be friends together on there and whatnot, as long as you're polite and stuff and all that good stuff. And it's a community, so you can share pictures, all that good stuff, right? And then there's the premium section, where you can go discuss basically the premium discussions. You can ask specific questions about the forecast and whatnot. And that is going to be the location for where we have our winter storm coverage, like what we've been doing on the website with the live chat. The reason why I'm going to have it there is because I can host the video and all the discussions outside of the sphere of YouTube, which is kind of important because I don't know what the heck. I got as you guys may remember from last week, I got a warning last week about my YouTube videos, about this live chat, because we talked about climate change and how, some of the thoughts I had were not up to whatever level someone was watching and made a complaint about. So I don't know what to expect from week to week, whether it's Elon, YouTube, whatever. So that way, with this, I'm making the Discord so that way we just talk about the weather. It's in our sphere, and I can control it without having the fear of losing video ability. So what we're doing here every week, not going to change. Still doing it on YouTube, still the live chat in the chat room on the website, but I've put way too much work into this over, God, it's going to be like 12, 13 years? Years to have some egomaniac in some social media. Yeah, longer, really. Wow. I mean, jeez. That, I feel old now. Just kidding. But yeah, maybe 15 years. But you guys get the point. I put way too much work in this over what's going to be almost 2 decades to have it get destroyed by some egomaniac either on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. So this is my answer to that. And I want to thank a lot of you guys who have joined the Discord, and which, by the way, is totally free. And if you're a premium member, you can jump on there. Let me know what your username is, and then I upgrade you to the premium status. You don't have to pay anything extra. It's already included, okay? So I want to share that and let you know. I know that there are options on Discord where you can make premium chats and stuff like that. But I've decided that I want to connect it to the paid membership on here, and rather than have a separate one and just get all confused, okay? So, again, it's a work in progress, but I think it's something that I think is worthwhile considering all the shenanigans going on, and God knows what's going to happen next. I mean, you saw what that happened with that Bitcoin stuff, where it wiped out everybody's money on that. So, you never know. So, you got to prepare yourself. It's always good to always protect yourself. Yep.
Just explain to them how they can find your Discord.
Oh, right. The Discord's easy to find. If you go to the public dashboard, actually, if you go right onto the website itself, it says the advertisement for the Discord. You can you just hit the Discord button. It's also in the public dashboard and the premium dashboard. And also, I'll add a couple. What I'm planning on doing is moving that also into the bar as well, the navigation bar, so you can find it as well. I just wanted to explain that because I know there were some questions about that going back and forth. And so there you go. You know what I mean? And I'm not an economist, but all I know is, well, lately our news has been more chaotic than the polar vortex. And that's saying something. Now we got that out of the way. I hope I answered some of your questions on that. Let's talk about the weather, because there is a lot to talk about. So first, let me go and show you this right here. There we go. Lake effect season is back. Now, you might be wondering, hey, Steven, we're in the northern Atlantic. Why do we care about lake effect snow? But those of you in the Poconos, Catskills, and those of you who like skiing, well, you're going to want to pay attention to this. The orientation of these bands right now are being driven by this trough here. And boy, are they enhancing the snowfall. On Twitter, you're seeing all these observations of really impressive snow bands setting up around Buffalo. And we're going to have to watch this trough as it drops south, because some locations around northeastern Pennsylvania and southeastern New York, basically the Poconos and Catskills, don't be surprised if you get some snow showers dropping in there and creating a little bit of havoc on that. I don't expect much in the way of snowfall, but it could reduce the visibility and make for some slick roadways starting tomorrow, continuing on through Friday afternoon. So pesky snow showers here and there. That is driven by the instability in the atmosphere. Now, take a look at this. This is the skewed T for right around Oswego. And in fact, let's move to around Buffalo, right in that heavy band here. Pull up a plot, probably get some advertisement. Maybe not, we'll see. Okay, take a look at this. Now, when it comes to lake effect snow, what you want to look for is instability, right? And I kind of want to teach you this because if you can understand the mechanisms of lake effect snow, then you can start to understand the mechanisms in our own banding in winter storms, right? To look for the instability in the atmosphere. So this is a nice little tutorial that gives you that opportunity. So let's zoom in. And you see this right up here. This right here is significant instability in the atmosphere. Then you kind of get this little neutral area and then more instability in the atmosphere. And so what happens is that as the atmosphere cools, because you're starting to reduce the amount of dry air in the atmosphere, this becomes severely unstable. So when you see this structure here in the atmosphere, and then you see here, this is your freezing line. Okay, so you take that up in this direction here. So you can see the potential as the atmosphere becomes more saturated with the moisture coming off of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. What you end up with is this collapsing cooling effect, knocking everyone below freezing, the entire atmosphere below freezing, and then you get this significant instability. Now, why is this important? Because if you could pick up these signals in these snow bands here to forecast for your lake effect snow events, then when you see this similar situation in our winter storms, you could pick up where the slantwise convection is setting up, where your strongest mesoscale banding is setting up, and also some thunder snow as well. So it's a very, very interesting setup here. You have plenty of dry air aloft. You're going to have this moisture surging northward, upward, should I say, further destabilizing the atmosphere. You can get some really impressive bands, and then take a look at the winds. What you want to look for in the winds when it comes to lake effect snow is uniformity. Okay, you want to reduce vertical wind shear. You want to have all the winds at every part of the atmosphere basically moving in the same direction, right? And so that's essentially what you have here. So when you have this type of signal setting up, it leads to this radar signature that we're starting to see. And boy, is it going to get pretty nasty over. They're talking about like several feet of snow falling around Buffalo and around Lake Ontario, around the Tug Hill Plateau up here. Kind of gives me kind of memories of when I was in college up in Oswego, New York, right about here. The one reason why I went to Oswego is because of this. You know, I got to stay in one snow band. I'm like, that's it. I don't care about any other colleges. Don't care about Penn State. Don't care about any of that. I'm going here. And my mom was like, it's because of the snow, isn't it? I'm like, yeah. So, you know, some people really love severe thunderstorms. I love the snow. And boy, this one did it really did it for me. So this scenario that's setting up leads to our upper level winds here at 250 millibars. And you can see how they're aligned so that the bands basically cut through Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and you get that enhancement, and then you can see where your snow is most likely going to be deposited in these spots. And you can take that all the way down to 500 millibars, 850 millibars. It's basically aligned in the same location. Now, as we move on through the next 48 hours, the winds will become more westerly, kind of like what we're seeing here at 850 millibars at all levels of the atmosphere. And that's where we introduce the potential, and see it very nicely here. See how the winds go more westerly here? See that here at 500 millibars, 850 millibars. And so what that does is that sets up the potential for these bands to head towards our neck of the woods. And we could start to see that somewhat on the European guidance. Kind of see that hint of it. But more so on your mesoscale guys. I think it's this one. It's one of these. Here we go. So here's the HRR guidance, basically showing that potential. So my point for right now is that watch out for some of these snow squalls. Would not be surprised if we get a surprise snow squall moving into eastern Pennsylvania, especially northeastern Pennsylvania and around the Catskills, and maybe getting as close as the coast. No accumulation, of course, but certainly a lot of instability in the atmosphere, cold air loft, a lot to work with here. And let me see if I can pull up the NAM guidance on this. I've got the HRR. It's around here somewhere. Ah, here we are. We'll pull up the NAM. We'll do 12Z and 18Z. And you can see it's showing up the same scenario here. So just be aware of that. I don't want you guys to get caught off guard, especially some of you guys who may be, you know, getting ready to travel and whatnot. Talking about travel, you can see that potential here. Here's what notice what the 18Z NAM's trying to pull here. Now, I don't think it'll probably be this strong, but you can see what the potential here is setting up where if the winds align just right for Friday evening. So it could be interesting. It would put a little chill in the air, so to speak. So let's also talk about what we're looking forward to in terms of the weather pattern and, of course, the Thanksgiving holiday, because everyone's asking about that, of course. First things first, I want to talk about the weather pattern overall. Thus far, everything I've been looking for and everything I've been looking at is pretty much locked in. As far as the sea surface temperatures, we'll refresh this again just to make sure we got the best data. Again, a continuation of a cold east-based La Nina. Our positive PDO is still in place. We got a little bit of cool water here, but not too bad. Our Atlantic pattern remains the same, pretty much set up there pretty nicely. Interesting evolution with our ESNO sea surface temperatures. We have seen some significant moderation. Now, I want to preface this first, but premium members know I went over with some detail of possibly the signal showing up in the SOI of a steady weakening of our La Nina. And the mall guys has been screaming that for quite some time for December and January for our La Nina to weaken. Now, at the coldest, Nino 1+2, which is the eastern zone, which is right about here, was around 2.1 degrees below normal. Now it's at minus 1.6, about a steady warming there. Seeing a steady warming starting to take place in Nino 3, Nino 3.4, and Nino 4 over the past couple of weeks now. So your coldest regime still remains in the eastern zone, but you're starting to see a slow, gradual moderation. Now, this isn't a quick collapse, and I don't buy the idea of La Nina just collapsing into a heap of cards, but I do like the idea of a steady, slow weakening. That has been the focus in the winter forecast from the beginning. I really like that evolution. I think we're going to continue to see that. And what you'll see as a result is an enhancement of the subtropical jet stream, which has been very active already. It's going to become even more active. And then you throw in some cold air, some disturbances cutting underneath, then things could get pretty interesting around here, especially as we head towards December. So we have that aspect. Then we have the aspect of our polar vortex here, and the key factor that I've been keeping an eye on, of course, is the EP flux. And this continues to remain strong, and you can see 10 days from now, it's remaining strong as well. 15 days out, remaining strong as well. And you can also see the heat flux in here. Let's see. And you can see that evolution take place. Look where it's focusing in. Right around Northern Europe. Why is this important? Okay. Now we go to the stratospheric forecast. The key to disrupting the polar vortex comes in two possible locations. The first one is around Alaska, and the second one is around Northern Europe and Greenland, right around this area here. Now, our first disruption of the polar vortex had a pretty nice height rise here, and then it weakened, and then our polar vortex consolidated a little bit. Now look at the forecast going forward. Look familiar? It should. It literally just happened about 2 weeks ago that caused a near split of the polar vortex and set up the cold weather pattern that we're about to step into tonight on through the rest of this week. Another phase sets in, and that continues to evolve. And notice the warping here on the European. Now, take a look at the GFS solution at about 240 hours. We'll do the 12Z again. We'll jump right to 240 hours. And notice the GFS is more consolidated, but it still has a strong ridge. I think what's happening is that the GFS is having one of its typical errors. And one of those errors is that it tends to try to strengthen the polar vortex a little bit too quickly. Now, it's understandable to try to strengthen the polar vortex after a split because that's typically what happens, or to balance out the different motions in the atmosphere. But if you continue to have these height rises that are supported in both models, it is nearly impossible for the polar vortex then to consolidate into one strong circulation like what it tries to do here. Instead, if you have a continuation of the same environment that we have in place right now, with our instability of the mass in the atmosphere because of the introduction of the volcanic influence with all of the moisture in the atmosphere, that's still in place. You still have the disbalance, the unbalance of the atmosphere from the troposphere to the stratosphere with what's going on in the Pacific, with the very warm temperatures in the northern Pacific and the La Nina at the equator, and you still have the transport in place. So the question is this. This is what you have to ask for when you look at these models, right? If you already have been through an environment where you already have destabilization and weakening and disruption of the polar vortex, what would change to support a different solution? And the answer is that nothing has changed. So why would the disruption end? Well, there has to be a trigger. There has to be a forcing mechanism to end it, right? Because right now we have a continuation of that disruption. And you haven't balanced out the atmosphere with what we're seeing with our cold environment in the mid latitudes in the southern hemisphere compared to what's happening in the northern hemisphere. And oh, by the way, let me go back and show you that we haven't seen any type of destabilization. The mid latitudes and the southern hemisphere remain very cold, historically cold, and that's because of that additional water vapor. Meanwhile, comparatively, the mid levels around here are trending below normal, but not historically below normal. Why is this happening? Well, take a look at what's happening at the higher latitudes here, and this is where things get interesting. They have been averaging near to above normal. When it comes to high latitude blocking, what you want to pay attention to is the state of the stratosphere in the higher latitudes. And the warming that's going on in the higher latitudes balances out to cooling in the mid latitudes in the stratospheric level. Again, you have to keep on having these balances, these little pegs to balance everything out. And so while you're trying to balance everything out, you have to think not just in one dimension, but in 4 dimensions. And how does that all work out and play together? So when it comes to these different features, and you're trying to figure out what's going on with the model guidance and what's going on with the long-range pattern, what you want to do is ask this one primary question. What's changing in the forcing parameters to support a different outcome in the model guidance? If you can't answer that question, then most likely there's an error in the models. If you can answer that question, then what you could do is narrow down the models that you want to use that matches the current state of the atmosphere and how physics should work in that respect. So once you do that, then you can figure out, okay, I'm going to throw out this model, use this model, adjust accordingly, and then you roll. Now, this process takes years of failure in order to really hone in and really use this process correctly. It's kind of like being a baseball player. You got to strike out a couple hundred times before you figure out not to swing at the curveball because the guy is throwing it just right to look like a strike, but really it's a ball, right? Same thing. You have to watch out for your curveballs and not swing at it every time just because your favorite model shows a massive snowstorm and then it's warm up 2 days later. You have to step back and say, okay, what makes physical sense? So with that being the case, I would say I've been leaning more on the European and the European ensemble guidance than anything else right now. Mostly because it's just been handling the current state the best, and it's done well 3 days out, 5 days out, and then long range out. Now, with that being the case, the European is still going to feature some, I guess you call it phantom storms, but that's because of the difficulty of figuring out the interaction of short waves in this type of weather pattern. But I'm not seeing anything that fundamentally changes my thoughts on the way that this pattern is evolving for the winter. This is going to be an active pattern, and when we get a combination of a negative EPO, NAO, and AO, Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation, and East Pacific Oscillation, when those all go negative, game on. And I think we're going to see that more often than not. So with that being the case, we can now discuss what to look for as we head into Thanksgiving. Well, we are going to continue to be in that chilly weather pattern, as you can see here. And that's going to open up the potential for some snow showers and snow flurries over the interior, maybe down to the coast, as we discussed. Then we look at around Thanksgiving. And what you have here is not a pattern change, but a pattern relaxation until we get amplification once again. And it looks like that's going to try to start to get itself act together by the end of next week. So in terms of Thanksgiving, the way that the pattern timing is setting up is that for much of Thanksgiving and also for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which is a major travel day, we're going to be under the influence of a ridge and overall a mild weather pattern at that. So overall, I'm expecting tranquil weather conditions. Then we get our storm to swing through. This right here is evolving because we're re-amplifying the pattern again. And we're reintroducing the polar air masses, not Arctic yet, but polar air masses back into the region. So I am very curious to see whether or not, and here, let me just go back here for a second. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I'm very curious to see this interaction right here, because this disturbance is in the subtropical jet stream, this disturbance is in the polar jet stream, and there's a question of whether or not this is phasing a little bit too fast. So I've seen that one of the errors that the European sometimes has is phasing these features a little bit too fast. So what we're going to have to watch out for is to see if this remains separate a little bit longer and it doesn't drive the warm air as far north. And I'd be very careful around the Poconos, northwestern New Jersey, the Hudson Highlands, the Hudson River Valley on Thanksgiving night through Friday for something a little bit colder, perhaps a wintry mix type scenario. Because if this fades is a little bit later, you don't get this. Instead, you get this polar air mass a little bit further south, and you get a stronger gradient here with cyclogenesis around the Delmarva Peninsula. So that is all dependent on how this feature interacts. So that's one of the unknowns I'm still waiting to figure out after Thanksgiving. Basically Black Friday, because I know everyone runs out and shops and they're insane. Personally, buying online, we're not down with that stuff. I did retail. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that to people. Trying to tackle people for a $10 TV or something ridiculous. But in this pattern that we have evolving, setting up, we introduce our polar air mass. We introduce on that Saturday a basically fall in temperatures, and then we watch this feature right here with some blocking potential, what this could mean for basically the Sunday after Thanksgiving. We could have some mischief setting up here with this disturbance here. So a lot evolving here. But for Thanksgiving itself, I think we're looking fine. The day before Thanksgiving, I really like the support of basically tranquil weather conditions. And then we watch this storm, how it evolves. Let me show you the GFS solution on this, because it kept everything separate. And I just want to show you what that potential looks like real fast. Here it is. And you can see what that potential looks like with the short waves remaining separate a little bit longer. You get your polar air mass trying to stay in longer, and it could lead to a real mess. Let's see if the 18Z, not that I would ever trust 18Z, but I'm just curious since I brought it up. Yeah, and the 18Z is trying to pull the same type of mischief here. So again, I wouldn't trust the GFS, but you can kind of see what the potential is depending on the timing of this phase. All guidance agrees that there's going to be a phase. The question is timing of that phase. So that's something to watch out for Thanksgiving night, when everyone is passed out from eating too much turkey, through Black Friday, where it could be rather stormy around here. So that's some things that we're going to have to keep an eye on. But Wednesday itself is going to be just fine. So if you're traveling on Wednesday, should be fine. Traveling after Thanksgiving, might want to give yourself some extra time. So now, after I've got through everything I've been thinking about for today and what's evolving and how the pattern is taking shape, I am going to answer your questions, because we have some activity here on YouTube. We have a ton of questions here on the live chat as well. So let's see here. Of course, we'll get the premium stuff done first. The feed from the tropics to the poles at 10 millibars is amazing. Let's pull that up before we continue. Where is that? There it is. Let's pull up 10 millibars. We'll zoom out. All right, so there's an amazing lengthy feed along the equator and the deep tropics. 70 millibar circulation itself reaches down all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Can't recall ever seeing the 700 millibar vortex circulation that large and weak and so far south all at the same time. Well, first we are at 10 millibars. You could see what he's talking about with the circulation. Again, this is all transport of heat. Going all the way around and ending up where? Towards Northern Europe. Right where we were talking about. Right? At 70 millibars. You can see, because of that evolution, look how strung out. Now look. When the polar vortex is strong, this feature right here is basically a donut of very strong winds. And all your cold air just gets locked up in northern Canada. That's what causes many of our mild winters. When you have this feature here opens up a whole door of potential of high latitude blocking, and it tends to transport cold air down towards the mid latitudes. So yeah, it's very broad, it's very weak, it's very diffuse. So as a result, you end up with that higher potential for high latitude blocking. It's a very, very interesting pattern, and why, when I saw this evolve in the fall, I can understand going near normal with temperatures and being uncertain about the prospect of snow. I get that totally. But you cannot support a idea for, blanket La Nina warm forecast with this type of environment. I hate to say it, and I'm probably going to bite myself in the butt for saying this. This reminds me of 95, 96 in terms of the polar vortex and the interaction with La Nina. It's literally almost the same thing. I'm not saying it'll be the same results, but it's literally the same environment. So it's kind of dangerous to say, oh, warm. Dangerous, that's all I'm going to say. If you want an idea about this, okay, we're going to skip the politics, but because I'm not economics major and I don't understand economics. The only thing I know is I put money in my savings account, and that seems to work out well. What do Thanksgiving Day look like, and Friday and Sunday after? I think most of the day on Thanksgiving is dry and fine. I think that the night, Thanksgiving night through Friday, has the potential to be stormy. Saturday looks to be cold. Sunday could feature some surprises, depending on that shortwave. But I'm not sure yet. I need more data. Looking at this is from Rob. Looking at the teleconnections, interested to see swings occurring around Christmas. Is your crystal ball buying the sign of activity around this time period? The potential, based on what I've been showing, is very high for high latitude blocking for the end of December. Whether that means winter storms or not will depend on a lot of factors that we just don't know yet. One of which is, how do these individual short waves within the polar and subtropical jet stream interact? I'll give you an example. A couple of days ago, there was quite a bit of support, let's say about 7 days ago, roughly. There was quite a bit of support for Sunday of there being a storm that's trying to develop, possibly even some snow for the interior. Now we barely have a few snowflakes and rain showers isolated. Why? Because on Sunday, the disturbance that was supposed to create a little bit of havoc is basically getting sheared apart and ripped apart because the polar and subtropical jet streams are not playing nice with each other right now. So you have the blocking, you have the pattern, you have the cold air in place, but because the timing of the two shortwaves is off, they basically sheared each other apart, and now you basically almost get nothing. So this is a perfect example of how you could have the pattern in place, but the timing's off just a little bit, and you end up with almost nothing. So I don't want to make any promises. All I could say is that the environment is favorable for something interesting to take place. Those who bet sports are paying attention to also lake effect snow for a Buffalo home game. Yeah, that's going to be crazy. That game is going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be chilly too. I wonder how that's going to impact the injuries that some of Buffalo's players are dealing with. That should be interesting. There's pretty healthy 250 millibar low centered over the equator, west of South America, basically due south of the Baja. Let's pull that up and take a look at that. 250 millibars. Let's see what we have here. Yeah, we have a nice little upper level low. It's pretty close to the equator. That's pretty unusual. Huh. That is an interesting feature. We're going to have to watch to see how that plays out. So you can see the subtropical jet stream here. This is an interesting feature. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that, see how that plays out. But you can see the subtropical jet stream and polar jet stream. You can see, look at this feature. Look how they're interacting here. This is not your textbook La Nina. You got your nice little ridge here off to the east, just displaced. Yeah, it's an interesting pattern to say the least. Okay. So far, it looks like historic volcanic eruption from the Whidbey. Interestingly, to see how everything plays out the rest of the winter, how long it has an impact there after. I'm not really seeing a lot of support for any type of additional volcanic eruption influence right now, but we'll see. On an unrelated note, is it just me or does Artemis rocket look like an old Saturn V with space shuttle boosters bolted on at the bottom? Possibly. Yeah, I can see your point there. What should the GSP heading south on Friday? Oh, what should it look like? It looks wet right now, based on the data I have right now. How are the winds looking for the balloons for the parade? Actually, winds should be fine for Thanksgiving morning. Okay, nothing too bad. Nothing that would prevent them from using their balloons. I think it'll be fine. I heard rumblings about a big storm Thanksgiving weekend, but I have my doubts at this point. I suspect that December could be interesting around here. It depends what you mean by big storm. I think there were some people running around making suggestions of snowfall for the I-95 corridor for Thanksgiving, and apparently those people did not do any research on climatology. The only place where I've seen successful winter storms around Thanksgiving is on Bob's Burgers. Other than that, historically, no. The reason why is this, okay? The water temperatures around New Jersey make it very difficult to set up a major winter storm in November. Can it happen? Yes. When it happens, usually something very unusual had to play out, and you had to get an enhancement of very strong rising air over a localized area, like in New York, Northeast New Jersey a couple years ago. It's very difficult to pull off, and you literally have to have everything timed together. Otherwise, making such a declaration of a major winter storm for Thanksgiving with data that's 10, 15 days out is very unwise. What we do have right now is a pretty good potential for some significant rainfall for the region on Black Friday and possibly some frozen precipitation for the northern areas, like around northern Connecticut, northeastern Pennsylvania, your climatologically favored areas. And that's dependent on the phasing that we were just talking about. Okay, so far some great questions. Check out YouTube. Oh, we got plenty of questions up here. Let's see here. Okay, first from Mark. Good evening, Steve. Good evening. Will winter 2022 into 23 feature more blizzards for southern New Jersey like this past winter? I don't know how to answer that question. You'll have a higher potential, but I'm not going to put numbers on it. Where is Discord link? Okay, Discord link. Yeah, I'm just going to make sure everyone So we go to the website right here, but right there. Go right there, boom. If you're a premium member, let me know, and I get you upgraded. What I usually typically need is your username or the email connected to your account. That way I can verify. Unbelievable what YouTube is doing to channels. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's why, look, I'm not looking to jump ship on YouTube or any other social media, but I'm not going to sit around and wait for something to happen to me. When is the first major snowstorm? I don't have a date, but again, climatologically speaking, normally after December 15th is when you have your best potential to seeing snowfall for the entire region. I really don't want to go beyond that point of saying anything else. Let's see here. Lehigh, I'm doing good. Lehigh Valley, snow or mix after Thanksgiving. Well, I would definitely not be surprised if we see some snow and mix after a couple days after Thanksgiving. Like I said, we'll have to watch that. One more question. How unusual is it for the polar vortex to get disrupted in mid-November? Isn't this something normally happens in January or February? That's a great question. Okay, so a couple of things. Typically, and here, let me go back to our polar vortex look here. I'll pull this up here. Okay. We'll use the GFS. Okay, so typically during the fall, you have the polar vortex starting to develop, right? And what that typically means is that you get sometimes the polar vortex is very strong very quickly, and then you're waiting for a disruption in December, January to get winter going. Sometimes you end up with a weak polar vortex to start, but not necessarily the disruption. As far as my memory goes back, and I could be wrong about this, because I'm kind of thinking about this on the fly. Typically, I don't see this amount of disruption in the polar vortex this early. And the reason why is because what I'm usually waiting for is the impacts of the Siberian snowfall rates, or the state of the lack of sea ice in the Arctic to help destabilize the atmosphere and lead to that disruption, or a major stratospheric warming event because of the state of the QBO that usually takes place as the winter evolves and we have that displacement and evolution to knock off the polar vortex that had developed in the late fall. We're not seeing that this year. Let me rephrase that. We don't have to wait for that this year. It's already going on now. And I think, again, and this is just a theory, I don't have documented proof yet because we're dealing with an environment that we never had before. My belief, my theory, based on the winter forecast that I put out, is that because of the destabilization of all of that water vapor in the mid-latitudes in the southern hemisphere, it caused a huge displacement in the atmosphere, which is trying to be filled because you had so much mass in the southern hemisphere that you have to balance it out in the northern hemisphere. So in order to balance that out in the stratosphere, you're seeing more of a transport from the troposphere to the stratosphere, okay, to kind of balance out the differences. And so that is why I think we've seen more and more disruption and more of this evolution of these building heights that are taking place around Scandinavia, around Alaska, and why the weather pattern is not acting like you normally would see in a La Nina weather pattern. Even when you compare it to other La Nina weather patterns where you have the triple dip, this is behaving nothing like any of those at all in any way, shape, or form. So you have to figure out why. That is the impact of all that water vapor is the only feature that is fundamentally different from any of these other La Ninas and from any of the other forcing parameters you normally have with the polar vortex. So by elimination, I think, I could be wrong, but I think that is why we're seeing what we're seeing. And basically right now we're like watching my theory evolve in live time to see whether I'm right or not. Again, as I said from the beginning, I could be 100% wrong about all of this. And then the polar vortex strengthens, consolidates, and my winter forecast bursts into a pile of flames and dung. That is possible. And I put that in the winter forecast in public and in the premium saying this is what could go wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong. Based on what I'm seeing right now, I don't think I'm wrong. And based on what I'm seeing right now, I wouldn't want to be the forecaster who's been going warm, 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 La Nina, La Nina, La Nina, copy, paste, reset. And what is the probability that Jacob deGrom will be leaving the Mets? Oh, baseball question. I'm not sure. You know what? I just to aside in terms of baseball, I'll just put it this way. What team is going to go 4 years, $50 million a year or $45 million a year for a guy that pitched only 28, 30 innings the past 2-3 years? I mean, for the Mets, it's more of an emotional connection. But we'll see. We'll see how that evolves. I'm cool either way. Look, I don't control the Mets, so I'm not going to worry about it. We'll see what happens. And as we've seen with the Phillies this past year, anything can happen. So we'll see how it works out. And then finally, we have one question from Dylan. When do you think we see a foot of snow for all of New Jersey? If I could tell you guys that right now, the government would probably kick down my door and I'd drag me out in the back.
I'd be picking winning lotto numbers.
Yes, and then I'll be picking the winning lotto numbers. Absolutely correct. I don't know. I can't look. I get the enthusiasm for snow, and you might have some people that will give you an outlandish answer with like a date or whatever. I don't know. There's no way I could know. Okay. Yeah. If I knew that again, I'd be beyond a genius. I'd be like a super genius and
an evil super
genius. But let's see here. Rob, back to the premium chat. Wow, 500 millibar sounding in Alaska came in at 5810 millibars. Yeah, that's impressive. Record breaking for any date during October through February. It is impressive. Excuse me. And the reason why that really stands out, and this is Ridge right here, is that, again, you have to think about what causes that. What is the environment that causes that? Why are we seeing this type of mass build? Again, this is mass buildup, right? When you have this ridge, you're building up mass. So you have to have an area of significant sinking and low mass to balance it out. So what are the mechanisms causing this, right? Very interesting. What was the pattern setup that caused the December 26, 2010 Boxer Day blizzard, and how does it compare to this year's expected pattern? Okay, the Boxer Day blizzard developed in an evolution where we had a major stratospheric warming event a couple of weeks beforehand, and a pattern destabilized, and you had to set up for a strong high latitude blocking regime in late December. What made the pattern work out just right was that you had the two short waves come in, interact at just the right time, and then evolve to support our Boxer Day blizzard. Now, what's interesting about that is that model guidance did not accurately portray the potential of this system until literally Christmas Eve night. Literally. I remember this vividly because I remember it was one of the last Christmas Eves I had with my Aunt Nancy and Uncle Frank at their place. So it always stands out in my memory. And I remember being very concerned about the evolution of the storm and warning everyone on Twitter and Facebook at the time and on the website saying, hey, look, this could be a major winter storm that people are not really picking up, and this could be a powerful winter storm. And I was right. Based on what I was seeing on the water vapor, I didn't trust the model guidance based on what I was seeing. I'm like, something's not adding up. The reason why I want to bring that point up is that model guidance in that pattern, where you're dealing with interacting short waves in the Arctic, polar, and subtropical jet streams, could not pick up that environment until 48 hours out. So it's an important lesson to learn in that you really don't want to get overly excited about anything that's 7 to 10 days out. And this pattern is very similar to that type of evolution and that type of potential, in that the forecast this winter for these individual storms can rapidly change in a very short period of time, depending on how these short waves phase. And you have to stay on top of that evolution, which means I'm going to be drinking a lot more coffee over the next couple of months based on this pattern. This pattern is very similar to that 2010 Boxing Day blizzard pattern in terms of the potential for high volatility in December. And you better keep your eyes open, because things could change in a very, very short period of time. So, would the increased water vapor from the eruption lead to higher potential for high precipitation events or help boost the subtropical jet stream? No, because that evolution, we're talking about more of a stratospheric level, and that would be more of a tropospheric level. They're two different levels. But because of climate change, okay, we are seeing enhanced precipitable water values outside of the volcanic impact. And because of that, you're seeing the potential for winter storms that can produce very heavy snowfall in a very short period of time, because they have more moisture to work with, and the snow growth is enhanced because of the slightly warmer environment. So there's that. I remember going out for Christmas Day dinner, and the morning forecast wasn't for much of anything. By evening, a blizzard was being forecasted. Yep, exactly. I recommend Death Wish coffee, super strong.
I've had Death Wish coffee.
Yeah, I had it. I gotta be honest with you. I had it, and it upset my stomach. I don't know why.
You also fell asleep.
Yeah, I also fell asleep. So apparently not that strong. I don't know. Who knows? My body's weird. I don't know. Maybe I've had too much caffeine. That could be it. I'm just kind of sensitized to it. Do you think we get 1 or 2 blizzards? Okay, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, so let me be very cautious in saying this. Remember, blizzard has to have specific observations. I definitely like the idea of multiple winter storms. In terms of blizzard conditions, I have no idea whether we'll even see one that meets those criteria. I would say it's possible, but remember, the conditions for a quote-unquote blizzard needs a certain amount of winds for a certain period of time, combined with snowfall and visibility conditions. So you have to have a combination of all those factors. So I'm not confident in saying that will actually evolve, but certainly a potential. Rob Allen says, I remember being on a forum that shall not be named on Christmas Eve, and the next morning log in and seeing the JMA going nuts, and the headlines completely changed Christmas morning. Fairly sure you even logged in and went on the radio show. Yes, I remember that. I was logged in there. I did the radio show, and the thing with that radio show is that it was fun, but things just got toxic for some weird reason. I had nothing to do with that. It is what it is. But that's why I don't do forums anymore, because it's just like some people, they just get very weird. But I remember that, and I remember getting blasted so much by like being a what you call it, a hype master, and I said to the guys, hyping may work for some people, but if you're starting a business, you're starting it with trust. Me hyping up a storm for Christmas and it not happening would torpedo my business completely. So why would I hype it up if I knew it wasn't going to happen? So I remember that was a crazy time period, because the malls were just there's a lot of people just malls, and they don't look at what's going on in the water vapor, and that's how you get in trouble. But man, what an experience, what a ride. Maybe we'll have one this year. It's certainly possible. When these winter storms are coming, I'll tell you, the chat rooms are going to be interesting. This chat's going to get interesting. When we get these winter storms coming, we have like 200-300 people drop in here. So it gets crazy, right? So it should be fun. So with that, let's see, what time is it anyway? I completely lost track of time.
56.
Holy smokes, I didn't even realize it was that close. I could probably still keep going, the way I am. And we don't even have a winter storm yet. Think about that. Wow. I'll take the last few questions, and then there was a nice crowd for that storm last January. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Again, just to wrap everything up, things are definitely progressing the way I thought they would for November, and for the winter forecast looks pretty good. I like where I'm at right now. We'll see how the polar vortex evolves. Is there a chat for next week? Yes. In fact, we will do a live chat. That's a great question, because Thanksgiving. Yeah. I kind of lose track of time. I don't know what the heck's going on. I don't even know what day it is anymore. I just keep going and going. Yes. Now, this is a good question for you guys, okay? Would you prefer to do it Tuesday evening or Wednesday evening? Because I'm good with either or. Okay? Right now, it's going to be Wednesday evening. But if I get enough requests, drop me an email. If I get enough requests, say, hey, could you do it on Tuesday instead? I have no problem with doing that. But right now I'm sticking with Wednesday, and then we celebrate Thanksgiving together, right? For that evening. Let's see here. Would you probably be starting cooking right about then, right?
Wednesday, I'll be doing some stuff ahead.
Well, see, now the question is, would it be fun to do the live chat while you're cooking, and then we could take a look at the food that you're doing and also the turkey?
No.
No? But how about I do the turkey?
Who wants to watch me wrestle with a dead bird?
Why? How about I wrestle with the dead bird? We could sell tickets. No? Why can't I cook the turkey? I could do it. Like I said, all I need is a large microwave. My wife has grown silent as I get ready to give everyone food poisoning.
The bird the night before. I gotta.
Okay, so it looks like Tuesday. It looks like we'll do Tuesday, because I'm going to have to help my wife, Susan, with prepping the turkey by giving pep talks and being kicked out of the kitchen. So we'll probably set up for Tuesday and do the live chat.
I will work around it. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. I got to help you. Yeah.
I have to help you.
No. So we'll probably do it on Tuesday. Wednesday night before things are usually pretty quiet unless one is doing the cooking. All right, so I'll let you guys know exactly what we do. We'll debate it, and also we'll see whether or not we have a storm to deal with. So that could be a factor as well. So I'll let you know. There will be a live chat. I can guarantee that. It's just a matter of whether or not we're going to do it on Tuesday or Wednesday. So we'll work around that. I tried deep frying. First of all, we're in an apartment. We can't really deep fry.
No.
But I did that when I lived in Oklahoma. It was actually pretty good, except when one guy did it with a frozen turkey and then it blew up. That was fun.
Oh my god.
Yeah, hey, look, that wasn't me. It was one of my neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my
was
neighbors.
not
That
their
was
favorite
not me.
Thanksgiving, I'm sure.
It was just hilarious for
Although
me.
the fire department.
No, we don't have the fire department, but it was hilarious to me. I'm like, all of a sudden, I see like this turkey just flying out. It was crazy. So we will have our live chat next week, and then we'll go from there. Thank you again. And also, I just want to thank everyone who has joined the Discord already. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. It has grown faster than I thought it did. I thought it would. I'd be like, maybe I'll get like 10 people. And I was like approaching almost 200 at the rate it's going. So again, thank you. And, I'll continue to keep on kind of playing with it and see what added features I can throw in there. And we'll be back next week. And if I don't see you, have a happy Thanksgiving. So that's it for tonight. I'm going to shut this down and get some rest. And as always, stay safe out there.